I can have you send me in. Second one.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started with the Circulation Committee meeting. We're going to start with introductions, and we can start in the back and work our way forward. Elizabeth?
I am Elizabeth Miles from Henry Public Library.
Erica Laughlin, RSA.
Karen McClure, Roxy Clausen from Morton.
Corey Shannon, Alpha Park Public Library.
Courtney Young, Avon Public Library.
Maria Garcia, Peoria Public Library.
Rebecca, Normal Public Library.
Lisa Kosky, Washington Library.
Sarah Arnold, Kewanee Public.
Ann Turnbull, Kewanee Public.
Sarah Nicholas, Delaware Public.
Nick Muskimen, PG.
Amanda Gray, RSA. Wendy Adams Good, RSA. Martha Troxel, RSA.
Cassandra Stokes, Peoria Public. All right, we're going to get started. Circulation topics.
And just to let you know that when we get to a certain point, I don't think he'll be here right now, but Kendall will probably be coming in and contributing a little bit to the conversation. So just a few things before we get into the really probably large topics that's going to need some discussion. I just wanted to go through a few things. At the last meeting we had discussed adding the birth date column in the user helper, and just to make sure, I'm sure most of you have noticed, but it is there now, so that I started to put me in there. My daughter in there. So now that when you do a search, oh, I didn't do that right. I gotta do a, that's okay. I want to do a browse. So now when you do a browse and you're looking for somebody, you know, is new coming in the library, you may be checking to see if they previously had a card. There's a birthday column now in the user helper that's going to hopefully help us have not quite so many duplicate user cards in the database, so just so you know that that's there. So another thing that I just wanted to mention that I don't think we mention very often, and that is the fact that you can, if you would like, go out and customize some of these wizards so that they are unique to you. We have them set up for default, so something like the checkout wizard, if you wanted to change it so that when somebody has checked a book out and then you click on checkout to new user, it no longer has that previous user's name on there, that can be removed from there. The previous item can be removed from there so that doesn't pop up, you know, it's not there all the time and possibly confusing. There's all these helpers across the top here. There's some helpers that you would prefer that your, you know, staff not have access to across the top. You can remove all those whatever helpers you want to remove up there. So at the next meeting, I think we'll start kind of going into different wizards and what you can actually do to customize them a little bit for your library. But basically, you're going to go in with a the supervisor login and just go into properties, and there's all kinds of things here, such as, you know, hide the current user, hide the current item. If you go over to helpers, they all have a place where you can uncheck them, and once you uncheck them and you've saved the properties and go back into workflows, and those things aren't going to be there any longer. So sometimes I think, you know, we don't think about the fact that some of these things can be customized a little bit more, and maybe they would prevent, like I say, staff maybe from doing things that you would prefer they not be doing, only because they have access to them. Once you take it away, unless they know how to get into the supervisor and turn it back on, it's going to be gone and they're not going to be able to see it. So I think at the next meeting that we're going to have in January, we'll start with the checkout wizard and try to go over some of the properties in here and different ways that you can customize it for your staff. So, and then that'll kind of give you an idea that you can go through some of the other ones and also do customization there. So. And anytime you go in and you actually change something like this and you go in and change properties, you do have to remember that that is just for that computer that you are on. You change it, it's not changing it at all the rest of the computers in your library that has workflows on it. So the best thing to do, you know, once you make changes like that and you want them, to apply to some of your other workstations, excuse me, my throat dried out right there. That's the time when you need to go in and save your settings, and then you can just take your drive to a different computer and just put those settings in that computer, and you don't have to go into the properties on each computer and change them. So, like I said, we will talk about that in more detail at the next meeting, but just kind of wanted to make sure people realize they could do that. So, once again, this is probably the last time I'm going to talk about it, but just to make sure, if you are having any problems with your scanners reading Quincy's item barcodes, because they do have a different type of barcode on their items, just let me or let James know. We've been working with libraries trying to get that straightened out so your scanners will read those correctly. And as far as we know, everybody's doing okay. So if you have any problems, let us know. You do have to, the scanner does have to be reprogrammed to read those correctly. So, and another thing that I wanted to bring up, just for information, this was supplied by one of our libraries, just so people know it. They had sent out a DVD in our library lawn, and it wasn't to one of our libraries. It was a library outside of RSA. And they used the RFID tags in there. And when it came back, they couldn't read the RFID tag. And come to find out, the library that they had sent the item to had actually, and their RFID tag was in here, they had put a label over the top of that so that it wouldn't read it. So if you were having a problem with something like maybe an AV or something and it's been sent somewhere and it comes back and your RFID tag's not being read, you might want to look and make sure that because after the label came off, it read okay, didn't it? So just kind of wanted to make people aware that could possibly happen. Another thing that I did want to talk about a little bit is when an item is sent to your library to be checked out by one of your patrons, if for some reason, say the item comes back to your library and it's missing a disc or something, we do want the library that checked the item out to be contacting the patron about something like that. We don't want the owning library to be contacting the patron. The way we've done things with bills and overdue notices and lost items, it always comes from the checkout library. It does not come from the owning library. So any contact needs to be made from the checkout library, not the owning library. So you just contact, you know, the ILL person at the checkout library and let them know what's going on, and then they should be the person that contacts the patron, not you. So. Another thing that I wanted to bring up, and let's see, I've got one here to show. At one time, we had a wizard that was in workflows. It was a lost card wizard, And sometimes people used it to, if somebody had lost their card, to give them a new user ID number. We did end up taking that off the workflow, so it is not even visible anymore to the libraries. And our suggestion, well, not our suggestion, but the way to replace a lost user card is to go into Modify Wizard and just scan or retype the new user ID over the previous user ID. But we have a lot of patrons in the database that have multiple entries in here because of the fact that using that lost card wizard created another entry in the database for that patron. So this is an example right here. You see over here there is a column that says user lost card, and these two with the asterisks on it were previous cards that this patron had. So what we are wanting to do is to go in and just delete all these out of there. All this information here of the previous cards will be kept on the patrons in their extended info. Oh, I should have been down here. So we look at his current card right here. You go over to the extended info tab. It has all the previous IDs on there. The way we have workflow set up right now is if they happen to come in with one of these cards, because working at a public library, also I realized that you give somebody a card and then the next time they come in with the card that they told you they had just lost. And so you go to scan it into workflows. If you do scan it into workflows into these previous IDs right here, what will happen is a box will just pop up and say they can't find the user. So just to let you know that we will be deleting those out of there so that they're not quite as confusing as they are. So does anybody have any questions or anything about that? So, or any questions up to now on anything? Okay. I also did want to talk to the libraries. I don't know how many of you actually use the on-shelf items wizard. I hope a lot of you do use that on-shelf items wizard instead of the pick list out in your Gmail account. But one of the things on this on-shelf items wizard, is down at the bottom where it says trap hold for selected copies. Our recommendation is that you do not use that after when you are trying to trap hold, for you to close this or open the trap hold wizard up and trap the holds that way. I've had several phone calls in the last month of people who have received a book for a patron at their library and they scan it and it doesn't show that there's a hold on it anywhere. And they say, I know this patron has a hold on. They go to the record and look. Well, what has happened is the person that sent the book to them just went to the shelf, found a book, didn't worry about whether the item ID matched or anything, and trapped the hold here. And that goes ahead and puts it in transit. Where if you're using the trap hold wizard, if it's not the right copy on the right bib record, what it will do is it will actually tell you that there's no hold on it, and then that's your sign that you need to go and try to find the correct one, because you may have a paperback copy and a hardback copy and a large print copy, or different publishers or that type of stuff. If you don't get the right bib record, the item off the right bib record, when you go to trap a hold and it gets sent, it's not going to be right, and the other library is not going to it's going to say that there's no hold for it. So what having to do is call the sending library and asking them to, we end up moving holds and deleting things and discharging things, so there's several different steps to it when that happens. So like I say, unless you are absolutely sure that the item ID matches, what is on this list right here, please do not use this. I recommend that you just go to the trap holes wizard and scan everything. It's just more accurate than using that trap holes for selected copy. So, how many of you use the on-shelf items wizard? Okay, not all of you do, but some of you do. Yeah. Okay. And do you normally trap it here, or do you normally use trap holes? So most of you are using the trap holes. So okay. So just like I say, just if you are using it, just go ahead and use this trap holes wizard here. Is everybody familiar with the on-shelf items wizard? So just make sure you are familiar with it. So this is your pick list, but it's your pick list. It's more accurate than the one that shows up in this person. More accurate than the one that shows up in Gmail because this will not show anything that has been discharged at another library before you get to this pick list, and it's a little more real time. Yeah, Bobby wanted to know if they could continue using the Mark Item Missing button here, and yes, Bobby, my suggestion for that also is, so make sure you have everything trapped first before you use it, so you don't accidentally highlight the wrong item and mark it missing. So as you trap things, they drop off this list so that if you close it, trap your holds, open it back up, everything that's trapped will be off the list, except for the things that you couldn't find. So yes, you can go ahead and use the Mark Item Missing wizard. But like I say, I suggest you wait till after you have everything trapped before you do that. So is that it? There was nobody else. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Wendy.
Speak up there, and we'll speak from here.
Oh, you got a speaker right there, don't you? Yeah, you can speak from there if you want.
Okay. We just want to make everyone aware of a situation with workflows with the notice type reports, so your overdues, your bills, your courtesy notices, those sort of things. We've had a few incidents in the last year or so where libraries have discovered that the text, that body of those notices that you guys can change and have specific for your library, that, like the statement that would say, you have an item that is overdue, and then the system automatically picks up the actual item ID and the patron's information, but that text, that body, that little paragraph, that can be changed. We've had a few libraries who noticed that suddenly their notice was blank without that paragraph. At the time, when it first started happening, we kind of assumed that someone had accidentally removed those because they are within the reports wizard. So it is something that could be accidentally deleted. And then we had one disappear that was one of our default ones. So we put in the ticket with CirceDynix and discovered that apparently it is a bug that's currently in workflows, that those text files can just disappear. So just to kind of let everyone know, there's obviously, like I say, nothing we can really do to stop it. We have hundreds of notices running, so it's not something that we can necessarily look at every day to see whether or not someone's text file is missing. So if you guys can just kind of, keep an eye out if you have, your own, checkouts, those kind of things. If you ever notice that you get a notification and it doesn't appear as if maybe some of that information is missing, let us know. They do now have, though, as a way to, I guess, kind of help us along with it. There is a way now that we can back up those files. So we are starting to run a backup, so that we'll at least have a backup, so if it does disappear, we can copy it back in. But it is something that right now is a bug that they don't have a fix for. So just kind of be aware of that. If you ever notice any of those notice reports where that paragraph is missing, just to let us know.
Does it happen on the, like the lost bill and everything too? Is it just all that?
Anything that's a notice that has those text files, so the courtesy notices, even like the hold pickup notices, where there's, you know, a little paragraph explaining to the patron that, you know, you have an item, that text file can disappear.
And then like the patron, if you send out a notice for patron expiration.
Yes, anything like that that has a text file, yeah. So I mean, they're still going to get the notice. Like on a hold notification, they would get, you know, the notification in their email with their patron, you know, their name and their patron ID and the item that was now available, but it wouldn't have that paragraph explaining that you have an item that's available for a hold. That explanation would be missing.
Parts of the notice.
Parts of it, yes.
Parts
Yeah.
are missing.
The parts that we're allowed to modify and adjust per library can disappear.
I think you guys had that, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, Peoria had that happen. I was one of the people that had that happen. So, okay. Thank you, Wendy. I did want to talk a little bit about ProPay, which is also called Blue Cloud Commerce, just because I realize parts of it are a little confusing for libraries that aren't actually using the ProPay option that we have right now. So what I wanted to let everybody know is, even if you are not using it, your patrons can log in, go through another library and use ProPay and pay for things. And Kindle, there's Kindle. If I say something wrong, let me know, okay? So what can happen is somebody can lose an item, and they are their home library is not a ProPay library, but they can log in through the website of another library that is a ProPay library, and they can actually go in and pay per item. So then you've got the library, the home library, wondering where their money is because they realized something got paid for, but they haven't got any money from the library where the patron paid for the item at. So just to let you know that anything that is paid via ProPay, even if you are not a ProPay library, you will not get reimbursed for it until the checks are sent out in early January and early July. So, huh?
Mid.
Oh, mid both of them?
Yeah.
Okay, mid-January and mid-July.
Because it takes me a week to put all the data.
Nobody can hear
A
it.
week to get it checked.
People online can't hear you, Kendall.
I'm talking loud. So it takes a week to put the data together. It takes a week to get the checks. It probably takes a week to get the checks signed. And then I put them in the mail, and everybody tells me they didn't get them anyway. And then we cut more checks, send those out. And it doesn't have to be your patron going and paying in another library. It could be your item.
Yeah.
Sent to fill a hold in another library. That patron loses it, pays for it online. So anything paid for in ProPay works just like your cert desk. So if your cert desk, if you would keep the fine, whatever the library that took the money in ProPay keeps the fine. But for damaged and lost items, you would send a check to that other library because the patron paid you. In ProPay, it works the same way. It doesn't matter what library the patron paid the money to for those items. We send the money to the item-owning library when we cut the check.
Now, one thing to know is you can go out and look to see if somebody has actually, I mean the wrong thing. They've actually paid for something or not, and when you just look at it, you're still not going to be able to tell from this screen whether or not it was paid via ProPay.
You can if you go into...
But you have to go in, yeah, let me get to, I got to get this in the other order. I think this one is one. But if you actually click on this line underneath here, which is called a glossary, and you go into that, and of course this one is, yeah, right here. You see right here, it says ProPay and PO, and that means the PO is the Peoria because it's the first two letters of your workflow's name, right, Kendall?
Mhm.
So,
And in the next batch of checks we send out for lost or damaged items, rather than sending an email separate from the check saying, hey, this was a lost
Right.
item that was paid for, and then 2 weeks later you get a check, we're just going to print all that stuff and put it in the envelope with the check so that it makes a little more sense when you get the check and you. Now, it won't be for like all the overdues and things that get paid for in your library, because everybody's getting reports for those things, or should be already. But for the libraries who are not ProPay libraries, and they get a check, and then they're like, what is this check for?
right.
And they don't, it doesn't tie back to that email that they may have gotten 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think this is a little,
This item was lost.
I think this is a little confusing for the libraries that aren't ProPay libraries. But that's why everybody should be a ProPay library.
All full on lines, yes.
And then the amount won't be that amount.
Yes, that is the amount that was paid
Right.
in workflows, but there's it averages to be 2.6%, and that's the credit card transaction fee that comes off of that.
So, do we have any questions about that?
Is that right on, like, Peoria, is that like on the website? Or is that the catalog?
It's in the
catalog,
RSA
yeah.
CAD.
So in a
I've
patron,
never seen it.
if you've got, well, I have a fine, I can show
You
you
wanna
real quick.
scooch over?
So it works in RSA CAT in the My Account page. So, if I knew what anybody's actual web link was, I could get right there. But so we'll log into Dunlap with my personal card, which always has $1 million worth of fines on it, because it's also my testing card. Oh, I owe $1. Good. You have to owe $1 to be able to pay online. That's the minimum that we've set up. So if your library is set up to pay fines online, you'll see there's an accept terms and conditions link that this text can be changed in here. They have to accept that, and if they don't accept it when they try and pay, it says, hey, you have to accept our terms and conditions. Doesn't mean they have to read them, but they do at least have to check the box. If you have more than one fine, you can pay just the fines you wanted to pay. It doesn't seem like people just basically have been paying everything, because I get a list every day of when people pay fines, and you know, sometimes there's a list of like 60 fines that somebody will pay off. Very interesting.
What was that 50-cent fee?
The 50-cent fee, okay, so there's two fees with ProPay. There's the fee charged by the ProPay vendor that pays for all of this. That's the 50-cent convenience fee. So I owe $1 in fines, but when I click through here, it's actually going to be $1.50 for the charge. Then that 2.6% or so credit card funding fee, that comes off of the actual fine amount. So because I have $1, I can move forward. So all of this stuff that's on this screen now, this is not actually running on RSA CAT. This is running in a box on RSA CAT, but that's actually the vendor's site. So there's no PCI compliance issues. If you have looked into getting a credit card reader and somebody goes, you know, you have to fill out PCI compliance forms if you have that, which are like 60 pages long. Nobody wants to do that. So you would go through and pay, put an email address in there, and then the person who pays gets an email that says, hey, you've paid this off. Put in your credit card information, address information, hit submit. As soon as it goes through and it says, yes, I've taken that money, 99.9% of the time, it goes right into workflows and takes that bill out of the patron's account in workflows. then all the patron has to do is go out of their My Account and go back into My Account, and it'll refresh all the data and show those bills as paid. 1% of the time, 0.01% of the time, there is a payment issue where the money gets taken from the credit card, but for whatever reason it didn't actually match back up with workflows, and then I have to track it down. So I know, essentially I know who paid the money, and most of the time I can figure out from the name on the credit card and the amount of money. Yeah, I can generally tie it. There's only been one occasion when I couldn't tie it back, and then a week later I ran across it randomly and figured out whose money it was, but every other time I can match everything back up. So I'll go back in and pay things, and I think I've only had to do that twice. But patrons get a confirmation code, and if they ever have a problem, they just give you the confirmation code. You send me an email, I'll figure it out for you. So we'll go back. So that's how ProPay works.
So we are going to be setting up for all full online members?
Unless you tell me not to, pretty much, yeah. It'll take us a while because there's setup work that has to happen, but oh, I don't have any. Oh, and I don't have my Find history turned on here. If I had my, I was going to show you my Find history because it's really server busting. Because I use my personal card whenever I set anything up or I'm testing something, and there's, I don't know, a couple thousand finds on there. It's very fun to look at. And sometimes I forget and I go to the library and want to check a book out and I owe $1,000. And they look at me. And I go, just go into workflows and override. And they're like, how do you know that?
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on ProPay? Okay. I don't know, how soon are you planning on
Yeah,
starting
by
that?
this time next year.
Okay. I didn't think it was real in a hurry. There's other things that
There
are...
are more important things. Yeah, getting synthetics unbound and the middle button, the middle tab for the blue tab.
Well, and the Cersei Dynix contract.
Click on, well, we'll get a contract out of it. So scroll down, go to normal, and pull that up. Do a search for something.
I always like dogs, so we'll do a dog.
So Morton and normal, I have this turned on for because I had to test with somebody. So what my end goal is for those tabs at the top. So I just added in for everybody. You've got your search results, and then there's the All RSA Libraries tab up there, and if you just click on that, the patron doesn't have to redo the search or anything. It just shows them the results for everything. So my end goal is to put the eRead Illinois and ADML content in a middle tab for every library and have only the materials that your patrons are able to download based on whatever login library they're in. Have the ebook downloadable show up in that center tab. I think it's less confusing for patrons, but it's still upfront and easy to find. And so I don't 100% have it working the way I would like to yet for everybody. As soon as we get that done, I will be rolling that additional tab out. What I'd like to be able to do, I haven't figured out how to make it work yet, is for those libraries that have things like lynda.com or Quincy, Kiwani's got some records that have downloadable books. Quincy High School has some records that they're actual MARC records in our database, but they link out to downloadable things. And I'm trying to combine those with the ebooks unsuccessfully so far. I thought I had figured it out, and I had figured it out, except unless you have an Advantage account through Overdrive, and then those records weren't showing up, and so I still haven't made it work correctly yet. And then click on, while we're here, click on, go back to a book or a regular item, and then click on any of those. The other thing that needs to be configured, and I was actually doing that before I heard Martha say Kendall might be in here to talk about this, is that Synthetics Unbound tab there. So if you mouse over any of these titles, it'll say check availability. If you scroll down way at the bottom of this, there's a shelf browse that supposedly will show everything next to it on the shelf in your library, customized to each and every library.
Wow.
And then you can full screen that and get a bigger view of things. So I think that's cool because, like, I'll find a book that I like and I'm like, well, what else does the library have? What else can I get? It's not quite fully configured yet, and we're at that point where I have 3 different vendors saying it's not us, it's not us, it's not us, and somebody, it is them. I just haven't figured out who yet, but that's the little bit of configuration data that needs to be finished. That basically takes everything that used to be in that tab on the left, right on the right of an item details screen. Part of it is the same data, but there's about maybe 3 times more additional data, and it covers nonfiction stuff, a lot more movies, magazines, academic type journals. All of those things are included rather than just kind of popular fiction material that was basically what the other one covered. So,
see, one of the other, what I think is a real nice thing about this, if I can get to this one as an example, is they give you the other names in the series.
yeah.
So if you're reading this series right here, here's the rest of the other books that are in the series. So I think that's really kind of nice to have that information right there,
And how
handy
this
for the
should work.
patrons.
So if you were on book 3 and you wanted to get book 4, you should just be able to click on book 4's cover, click check availability, and it should look in your library for it. I don't believe that's working at this
I don't
point.
think it is either.
Unfortunately, with 200 libraries, that means that's 200 places that has to be configured and indexed for.
And what I also liked when I was looking at this is the fact that if you are looking, and this is the audio book of it, if you're looking at the audio book, it just shows you the audio books in the series. It doesn't show you like an audio book and then a book, audio book or anything. It's all the audio books that are out there available in the series. So to me, I thought that was kind of nice for the patrons.
Yeah, Synthetics has been doing a lot of work on this product lately. It's pretty much brand new. I think they announced it earlier this year.
Do they have any questions about that? Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is the RSA revised in transit policy. And hand it out. You want to hand these out? Let me keep one of them. Kindle over there. Okay. At the last RSA users group meeting, it was voted to revise the in-transit items policy, and so this will in fact actually take effect. We're planning on the 1st of the year. So, and this is changing things different from the way we do it. Amanda will stop sending out emails every month saying these items are missing in transit. So what we are actually going to do is, and if you see on this, if you're looking like under the for the hold area, and if you get down to number 7, it says, on the 1st of each month, September to June, RSA will run a report to change the current location to lost transit for any items in transit greater than 45 days. A list of these items charged will be posted to the RSA support site and or emailed to the RSA listserv. So if anything has been in transit for more than 45 days at the beginning of the month, we are going to be changing the location on all those to Lost Trans. Now, Kendall said, and I thought I put it down here somewhere, that currently we have
2,339.
I didn't write it down. 2,339?
2,339 items as of Monday that were in transit for more than 45 days. It's not as bad as it sounds because half of those items are in transit between branches of the same multi-branch library. So it's really only about 1,100 items in transit for more than 45 days. And, you know, some of those go back to 2007. So the first time we do this, there'll be a lot of them. The report will be really long. After that, they'll be much shorter because most things don't end up staying in transit. And honestly, most of the things that are on the transit list are books that have very low cert. There are very few movies. There are almost no DVDs. There are very few audiobooks on that long transit list because they have high turnover. So even if you forget to untransit something out of a blue bag and you put it back on the shelf the first time somebody checks it out, it comes out of transit and then gets checked out to that person. It just needed to be scanned and somebody just missed it. The other thing we've noticed is, especially for items moving between branches, when you look at that transit list and you sort it by date and time, you can see, I'll pick on Peoria because you're here and so I can pick on you. You'll see 10 items put in transit from Peoria, Maine to Peoria North, all within 10 seconds, all on that items in transit over 45 days list. So whatever container those things were in got to the other branch, and whoever got that container just forgot to scan them all before they put them back on the shelf. And those are just the ones that haven't checked out since. So I have a feeling that's the vast majority of the issues is that, you know, people either are not, you guys know, when you miss that pop-up on the screen, things stay in whatever transit state they were in, and I think that's the vast majority of the issues. If you've ever taken a tour of the hub, there's nowhere for books to hide out there. They're just not. They come out of one blue box, they go on a table, they go into a blue box. That's how it works. So I think that's the biggest issue is just scan errors.
So, yeah, for one thing, this does mean, you know, you really need to be looking at your pending transit list. The only problem is there's going to be things that aren't on your pending transit list because maybe it was your item that was sent to another library and now it's going from that library to another library, and so you're not going to be able to see it. So that's kind of the problems that Kendall's been running into trying to come up with reports. It's actually going to show you you know, what is actually in transit or what has been marked lost in transit because of the fact that some of them you can't see because they're not going to be on your pending list. If I remember what you told me right, Kendall, these reports will actually tell you where they've been transited from and that type of stuff. So if you are, you know, what you should do, you know, maybe if something, well, not maybe, but if something is lost in transit, if you have not already contacted whoever put it in transit to start with, then you need to do that, trying to clear up some of these things too. So
the report shows, the report I have now, it's based on owning library. That's how I broke it out because you of course want to know the status of your items. So it's based on owning library. And if it's in transit from you to someone else, it just shows you who it's in transit to. If it's in transit from someone else to you, it just shows you who that item is coming from. And if it's in transit between two libraries and neither one of those libraries is you, it shows you both the transit to and the transit from library. The reason why that's important is because once we bulk convert these things to lost transit as a location, that information goes away, so it'll still be on the report, so we can go back and say, okay, this item was coming from this person on this date. But anything that's in transit right now is eligible for holds, shows up in RSA CAT as in transit, and if that's the only item on a record or one of few items on a record, patrons are looking at RSA CAT going, what's in transit? I'll just put it on hold, it'll come. Some of these things are zombie holds and stay zombie holds forever because they never come out of transit. So once we mark it as being in location lost transit, it's not holdable anymore, and it'll display as item not available in the catalog. So, we'll understand, oh, item not available means it was one of these ones that disappeared in transit, probably on somebody's shelf, but until it gets scanned, we're not going to know exactly where it is. The important part, though, is to stop the holds on them, because patrons put holds on things expecting to get them, and those will never fill the hold.
So just as an example, and Greg's not here, so I'm picking on him because he's not here. This is Creve Coeur's list, and you can see
2011.
2011, yeah. So, and you can see over here the reasons. Some of them are they're coming back to go back on their shelf, and some of them we're supposed to come for a hold. So, these are the kinds of things that we want to clear up and get them so that number one, patrons can't place holds on them and never get the hold, and just to clear things up. So
Ideally, you will get a report that shows you everything that's in transit for 30 days or more, and you'll go look for those things.
Right.
Whether they're in transit to or from your library, you'll go look.
and
Ideally, you'll find most of them, so there will be very few that we have to change. I live in a perfect world.
you do, Kendall.
Everything in my office works perfect.
Because I keep saying there's a black hole out there. Some of these things, there really is. It makes no sense.
Reality distortion deal in my office.
It makes no sense that some of these things just disappear. I still say Olds has a black hole somewhere that's sucking these things into them. So, but yes, if you have a list and you are checking, just make sure that you are also contacting the person that, number one, it is being transited from that library, but that transiting library could also not be the owning library, so you may need to contact the owning library in case maybe, they had loaned it to somebody, and instead of them sending it on to who they needed to send it on, maybe it went back to the owning library. So there could be a couple of different libraries that you needed to contact.
That bottom one on that list.
Yes, we were looking at that. There's something wrong with that. That did not scan correct. Something did not scan correctly there. So I said, I'm wondering if it's sitting on.
I wonder if you look on that record if there's another copy where they just went back there and re-added the item.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. I don't know. It doesn't look like it. I think he's the only one that owns it. So, any questions on that? So, Kendall has been working especially this week, on trying to make the reports work correctly. This is something that, to be honest with you, Nick's sitting in the back. He does a lot of transit reports and does a lot of this type of work. And there are some of these things that just disappear, aren't there, Nick?
I've found, of the list that I've been working on, I want to say there's probably about 83 items I've been working on. I've found about half of them. Some were on my shelf, some were on other shelves. One item was on another library shelf for 1,000 days. And I called for it like 3 times before. A third of the libraries haven't gotten back to me after they said they would. One library refused to look. They're just like, it's not here, hung up. And a couple libraries have refused to remove the items from the chart. So like I've had one item missing in transit that I've had for every 3 to 6 months since 2011 when I took over. And it's been missing in transit since 2010. So it's a mixed bag. But about half of what I've been looking for I've found. not quite as cheery of a world as Kendall would like.
In my office, 100% of my stuff found. I only have 3 items in my office with barcodes, and I know exactly where they are.
A lot of the libraries have been really nice and accommodating about it too. So not to put a really negative spin on it, but beware to try and interesting when you call police.
Well, hopefully, if somebody calls your library about something like this, you will look and cooperate. Did something pop up? No. Mindy? Okay, all right. Okay. So is there any other questions about this? So this will, like you say, should be starting. Kendall, where are you going?
We're gonna do the renewal policy.
We're going to do,
are we?
yeah, so the next one may be the problem that we really need you.
Don't leave.
So, like I said, this was approved at the last users group meeting. This should be starting in January, unless something else comes up in, about the time that we really start doing this, there'll be more emails going out explaining it, because there's, as you see, a lot of people not here today, so they're not going to know what's going on when it starts happening. So we will do a little more explaining about what's going on at that time. So. Do you just want to sit back there, or do you want to present this? No, I'm talking to Nick now.
Oh, I thought you were talking to Kendall.
No, I'm talking to you. I mean, well, you were standing right next to him, so you don't have to if you don't want to.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go ahead. Let's hand those out.
I can chime into that.
You can chime in from back there. Okay. At the last users group meeting, some of the things with the update that we did, there's a few new enhancements that really pertain to circulation. One of the enhancements that I don't know how many people noticed, is just kind of a simple one that made me very happy, is the fact that now when you go into modify user, it doesn't ask you to save it, even though you haven't made any changes. That used to drive me crazy. Every time you went to modify user, got ready to close it, a pop-up box would pop up and say, do you want to save the changes? And I'd go, I didn't make any changes. And you'd have to answer yes before it let you go on. That is gone now, and yay, I'm glad that one disappeared. But there are a couple of things, well, one of them that we're going to talk about today, and this was discussed at the last users group meeting, and they suggested that it be sent back to the circulation committee. It had never been to the circulation committee previous to this. And I should bring this up on the screen so people can see what it looks like.
Just go to my account.
No, I want to show the document.
I was going to say, I've got some.
I don't think the document's in your account, is it? Oh, no, that's the current one. You want the current one. Okay. This is a change in the RSA item renewal policy. We did have a circulation policy subcommittee meeting a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and thankfully everybody that came to the meeting was more than happy to stay as long as it took for us to get this straightened out. They were here for 4 hours working on it, so just to let you know, they really put a lot of thought and into this and came up with this policy. What can happen now that we could not have previous to this is that previous to this, whenever an item was renewed, it would be renewed from the date that it was renewed. So, well, and that's the way it's currently working right now too. It's not previously. But if somebody renewed an item today and it's not due till next week, it would renew from today, and they would get 2 weeks from today, not 2 weeks from the date that the item was actually due. What we can do now that we could not previously do with the upgrade is, now when an item gets renewed, it can be renewed from the due date, not the date that it's actually being renewed. So if somebody had a book that was due next Friday, and they renewed it today, and you had a 3-week loan period, the renewal would be 3 weeks from next Friday, not 3 weeks from today, is what is the option that we have to do right now. What we are, of course, wanting to do is to do that because we think that makes more sense for the patrons, because the patrons kind of think when they're renewing something, they're renewing it from the date it's due, not the date that they're calling. We do want to use that option since it is here. But then we got to talking about when the item can actually be eligible for renewal. So this is part of this renewal policy, has this renewal timeline. And we also got to talking about what is called seen and unseen renewals. So a seen renewal is the patron brings the book into the library to renew it. Kendall, you also kind of said that's like maybe staff intervention type thing is what you're calling it. I've always said they actually physically bring the book in the library and you can actually see it. The unseen renewal is they go out to RSA CAT and they renew it themselves. So that's the difference between those two different terms. So what we have here that we added to the RSA item renewal policy. This is just proposed. This is not actually what we are going to present unless you guys agree to it today. So renewal timeline, an item renews from the due date for unseen renewals, including RSA CAT, per the following renewal timeline. Items that check out for 7 days or more become eligible for renewal 4 days or less from the due date. Items that check out for 6 days or less become eligible for renewal 2 days or less from the due date. Seen renewals always renew from the due date and are not limited by the renewal timeline. It is recommended that libraries renew items as unseen as default so that workflows renewals follow the same renewal timeline limitations as RSA CAT renewals. So basically what we're saying, and Kendall can say this a little bit better than I am, but what we don't want patrons to be able to do, say you have 3 renewals. We don't want them to check something out and then the next day renew it, and then it's stretched out for 8 weeks, of renewal. We want to make it have to be a little bit closer to the due date before they renew it. So
We want to give people the opportunity to put the item on hold. Is essentially how that works.
So do we have discussion on this?
So if they were trying to review it on the website before that limit, it would come up and say this item is not available for renewal.
Yeah, so Martha, if you were back on that page, then you're no longer on.
Which one? Just back to RSA CAT.
Go to My Count and go to the library checkouts. So here I've got several items checked out. That top one, I've reached my renewal limit and I can't have any more. That intellectual property freedom manual, I have on, so because I've checked this out from the RSA Professional Development Collection, I turn these rules on there. So if you do a select all and hit renewal, it will tell you why things renewed or did not renew. So for example, the top item has reached its renewal limit. There's no way I'm going to be able to renew that online. The second item down, now that's fallen into that time period where it's not close enough to the renew date to actually do it. So it'll say item can't renew at this time. The item can be renewed after, well, essentially it's the 5th, but it says the 4th at 23:59. That's just a idiosyncrasy of the way CERT rules work, because things are due at the end of the day they're due, not at 8 a.m. on the day they're due. So, but it does put the time. And then the item below it, says I can't renew it at this time, but I can renew it on the 11th of next month. So I wasn't able to renew anything because it was not within 4 days of the due date. And it does tell you, so that you read. Well, that's true. That is true. Yes.
Will there be any, will there be any indication in Shop Bomb?
In Shout Bomb, you are not told if you can renew an item or not. Well,
Will you
you
do
get
the
the,
renewal?
yeah, if you do a renewal, it'll tell you only that the ones that renewed.
Okay.
But they generally send that renewal reminder 3 days before something is due. So it's within that window. So anything that you would get a text on saying, hey, these things are due, do you want to renew them? It's in that window so that it could be renewed. That's part of the reason why we chose 4 days. I've talked with other consortia. Most people are generally using 3 days before the due date, and it seems to be working fine for them. And the two things are tied, by the way. So you really can't turn on renewal from the due date without turning on the number of days back from the due date, because then people just have no opportunity to put something on hold and get it like they would normally. And if we turn the feature on, any staff member in workflows that does a seen renewal, it will always renew from the due date when you choose seen.
And right now, this defaults to
No matter when you do it, by the way.
So, coming into workflows here and doing a renewal, it's just going to renew from...
It would renew from the due date.
It would renew from the due date, right. Because it's seen, so...
Would that be a default that could be changed in our super account?
That could be changed on the server, and anyone who hasn't played with that setting on their local computer, we could flip it from the server side. I do believe, yeah. As long as it's a right-click setting. I think it is.
We checked it during the circuit test stuff.
I think we did when it
Right.
was,
You
yeah.
were just going to do that.
Well, not until...
Well, I mean, that was the rule.
Yeah.
And if we remember back to December of 2007 when we went live, this was high on the priority list because there was a lot of patron training going on at the time as to why things were renewing the day I renewed it, and I renewed it 2 times so that I could have 6 weeks worth of checkout, but it was still due the same day, and the patron just would burn through all their renewals, not realizing that it was renewing from today rather than from the due date. Yes?
So I was never on Carl because I wasn't here. Did Carl work the other way? Because I have never worked with a system.
Patrons could renew things online.
Well, we could renew
Yeah,
it
it could renew
online, but
online.
I've never worked with a system where it renewed from the date it was due. It was always the date that you did the renewal.
Yeah, I don't even think you could do it.
I can't remember.
There was
a long time
a lot
ago.
you couldn't do it, Carl.
Yeah, there was a lot you could not do, Carl.
I tried this Taylor machine from my life, so.
Yeah. So, any more discussion? I mean...
How would it work if you are renewing an overdue item? Like, if Martha's got one that was due on the 12th, would it renew from the 12th or from the date the patron called in and said, oh no, I forgot this is due?
When it's overdue, it renews from the date they call in, the date that you go to renew it. So.
And charges is fine if you have other.
Right.
Yeah, fills that bill and then rechecks it out.
Oh, yeah.
What do we
I've
got?
been trying to answer the best I can. Sorry. Answering again. Okay. So there was the question from Bobby and Quincy. about the seen, unseen, and whether or not we'd be turning that off, and you kind of answered that we would be setting the default to the unseen, but still obviously leaving that option where staff could override. Then a question from Amy at Carthage. A lot of patrons like being able to renew things when they come in, so everything is due at the same date as what they're currently checking out. This would make that more difficult, is her question. And my answer was yes. That would not work the same as it does currently, and that you would need to modify due dates.
That depends if the staff is doing it, though. If they're coming up with a staff member and the staff is renewing it, as long as that staff member changes it to seen, it'll
still renew from the due date.
It'll let you renew it early.
Yes, but it still renews from the due date.
No.
So it would be due for a 2-week checkout. It would be 2 weeks from that date, not everything due on.
Amy's talking about if I have something currently checked out that's due next Saturday, and I come in on this Saturday and I check out some new things, I want everything renewed. Currently it will do it, that if I renew everything, the one item I currently have out, it will renew it to have the same due date as the items I'm currently checking out. But it's renewing from the date that I'm there, not the due date.
I get that. I'm just like, it would give them longer anyway, so I thought the problem would be.
They want the same date.
I was gonna say.
That's. And then Bobby asked about on the modified due date. She asked about then that if you modify due dates, then it would change your renewal statistics. You wouldn't have the renewal if you modify due dates, and that is correct. You would be missing that renewal statistic. And then Bobby's asking, would an override option pop up?
Override for which?
If you do the unseen renewal, you would still get. Do you still get the pop up?
Hold me up, Martha.
Whether you could still override it?
And renew user. Oops.
Yes.
But
if you do it as seen, you would need
23682. It's basically the same messaging. Yeah, sign the door. Try and renew the top item, I think.
But it's unseen?
Yes, unseen. So just right click on it and do right click on the item ID. And then do
I think if you unchecked it, it probably didn't pop up.
Oh, probably.
no, you should be able to just right click and see it.
No, because I'm in
that maybe
renewal.
in the
I think it's because.
Oh, you're
in the
Yeah.
Check out. Sorry. Yeah, I'm thinking a different wizard.
So what do you want me to do?
So yeah, just uncheck the scene. That should give you the messaging.
So there is no override. You would have to,
Yeah,
you would have to do it as
to
seen.
do it as an unseen, yeah.
Excuse me. Maybe I am. Any other questions or discussions or did we go through everything that was
That's
on there?
everything so far on mine. I can't see it when I was typing. Can we? Do you see it? Does it show you?
No, it generally, there, something just popped up. Your light was blinking.
No.
Okay.
Oh, maybe that was a new one. That's probably Wendy's answer.
Okay. Well, what we would like to do is present this to the next users group meeting. The way it is written.
Bobby has another question, sorry.
Okay.
So her question is, what are the perceived pros of doing this?
Okay, so the perceived pros of doing this are because for the whole first year we were on the system, everybody complained about the fact that it was renewing in a way that patrons did not expect. Somebody checks something out and they click renew, they think it's going to be due from the due date and not the day that it is, that they're sitting at their computer and renewing things. That has been a bugaboo for a while, so we can either continue to train patrons using the system that the system is broken and here's how it actually works, or we can make it work the way patrons think it'll work and tell patrons, hey, we fixed it so it works the way you think it should work. And then the flip side of that is now things are due, or now you can't renew until X number of days before the due date. Which makes your courtesy notices a little more important as well for those emailing those out.
Well, do we know how this works if you go in and they just happen to hand the book to you in a pile of books to check out, and you go in, you're in the checkout wizard, try this? Because normally when it pops up a box and says this is, you know, like already checked out to this patron.
You would think that would revert to a seen renewal since the system has actually scanned it.
I think it's
Well, you want to do a seen or?
obviously receiving it because you scan the barcode, but
Well, yeah.
It asks if you want to renew it or if you want to.
Go to checkout.
Because I've never seen anything I've renewed come up as an unseen renewal at my library.
well, but there's a thing with the button.
I've never put on a choice.
And then,
But if I don't want to do it that way.
yeah, just copy the item ID.
So when you're checking out,
I had one
No, there it is now, probably, anyway.
No, that's not.
Oh.
Oh, there you go, renew as seen or renew as not seen. Well, if you have it in your hand, you probably are seeing it.
I would think so.
I saw a hand back. Where,
Yeah, I was gonna say, at Alpha Park, our patrons have come to expect that if anything that's renewed, it's gonna renew from the day that it's renewed and not from the day that it's due. So if we went to this, all our patrons would probably be confused and maybe unhappy if they go in and renew something, and if it's for 4 days, they're not able to, they're gonna call and ask us, why can't I renew my book? I've been able to renew it in the past.
And that is the question here. The question is, do we want to continue to train patrons that it doesn't work the way they think it works? And so reset your expectations, or do we fix it so that it works the way they thought it should work and then have to tell everybody we fixed it?
Can we forward all the complaints to you?
Sure, my reality distortion field, the phone does only can ring one at a time. And believe me, patrons will call me because they figure out how to do that.
okay, but I don't actually care that much now. But I don't. I am still really perplexed because I have understood since I was a little kid that books renewed from the day that I was there saying, I want to renew this book. And I didn't realize that this was such a problem that other people didn't understand.
It was when we first went live. It was one of the things that people constantly complained about.
But how? I mean, okay, before we went live, I did have a Gaylord machine. And obviously, when you punch that card in, you get released from the day you are punching that card in.
You guys have never had a patron who's wanting us to go on vacation for 6 weeks?
Oh, yeah, I've had
And get upset that they have to wait and call on their vacation to renew?
I tell my patrons that they're not picking out my new book. I will work with them on their vacation.
Modify the due date? Yeah, but I have somebody on the weekend,
You
on
could.
the weekend or something, like that, and maybe before we get started.
I'm so sorry.
There was a pop-up.
And I told her, well, I'll renew next week, so otherwise we'll.
Chantry Miller says, same for me, the library I grew up going to renewed from the date of renewal, not the due date.
And she wouldn't have to wait.
like, oh.
I don't care which way we choose to go. All I know is that I got beat up about this a lot 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, 10 years ago. And so when I saw that it had been fixed, I was like, woohoo.
Not saying fix, change.
Fixed.
Change.
Fixed.
Well, you know, it's obviously something that other libraries thought was a problem, or they wouldn't have.
For what it's worth, I've been informally asking my patrons as I see them since users group. Because we just did an update on our self-checks too, so it's been a good time to talk about changes coming. Because like now you can renew through our self-check and things like that. But I've mentioned that this was something that we're talking about and thinking about, and I've overwhelmingly had positive things. I think I had one person who didn't like it, but they also had us check out for them because they don't like computers. So I haven't been running into negative feedback from the patrons that I'm asking. I pretty much whatever I'm asking, I've been asking what they thought. So that's just my library. But we're excited about this.
The place that my patrons are is, I do have the patrons who come in once a week and they check out another book and they want everything to do at the same time. And they know they're burning a renewal because I've been telling them that. But they want them all due the same date, so they only have to remember one date. And this would take that. Now, most of them I do work real well. So, yeah.
Like I said, either way is fine with me. To be honest, it's less work if we leave it the way it is. Because the way this is implemented is per cert rule. So every library that has a cert rule in the system, we have to touch. So that's 2,500 or so lines. But
Is there any more discussion?
No.
You have anything?
So really, you can only add 4 days, right? Because you can only renew it 4 days in advance. So if you can't renew, it can only add 4 days to your.
No.
No. So I check a book out today for 2 weeks. It's due in 2 weeks. What's today? Thursday? So it's due in 2 weeks on Thursday. Under the way the system works now, if I renew the book tomorrow, it's due 2 weeks from tomorrow on Friday. What this would do is this just tells me until Monday, Monday the next week, I can't renew it at all. And then on that Monday, it would let me renew it, but it would still be due on Thursday, but it would be due 2 weeks past the due date Thursday. So you're getting your full, if we turn this on, you get the 2 weeks, and then the next 2 weeks is a full 2 weeks. The thing that the patron gives up to get that full renewal of the 2 weeks, rather than waiting until the day it's due to renew it, is there's more time built in for somebody to put a hold on it, which would block the renewal. So right now, if a patron wants the full 2 week renewal, they have to wait until the day it's due before they renew it online, which also allows time for people to put hold on it. So
We're just going to have much less window to get that renewed.
yes. So there's positives and there's not positives. What are those? Those would be negatives. See, I'm such a positive person, I can't even think of the word negative. I like not positives better. A little more rosy.
Well, like I said, this is what we are proposing. I mean, we can go. What we'll have to do before it goes on to the users group meeting is take a vote of the people here and the people online, and see, you know, if the majority is okay with it. The other thing is, I mean, we could change part of it. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly the way we've got it here either. So, you know, if you want to think about it that way too, so.
Is this an all or nothing thing, or can it be set up library by library?
It could be set up library by library. I would really prefer not to, because that would be incredibly confusing for patrons. So think about a patron who travels between libraries. So I've checked something out from Dunlap, I've checked something out from Peoria, I've checked something out from Fond du Lac. I go online to renew everything. If Peoria is using these rules, but Dunlap and Fond du Lac aren't, now I get mixed renewals. So some items I can't renew because it's not close enough to the due date. Other items do renew, but they renew from the date I renewed it and not the date that it's due. So that would lead to that would be the worst case scenario, essentially, because now we've got all kinds of confusion based on what library did I check this out from, that kind of thing. So I would prefer that it was either an all or nothing thing, just to make life easier for patrons. And we know patrons game the system, but that would be a harder one to explain.
Anybody else?
We did have one more comment, Sarah Snyder, just, I think there are pros and cons to both, it's just which cons are more tolerable.
I agree 100%, yes.
I think some of the cons would go away if you would extend it maybe to like a week, that they could renew it like a week in advance. And set it, because people are getting pretty close. I have patrons that they come in all the time and say, of course they're college students, come in all the time and say, I have no idea what I'm to do, but they know they've had it a couple of weeks, you know what I mean? But I don't know that they're.
How long is your default checkout? That's the other piece that fits in there.
3 weeks.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because if it's a 6-day checkout,
Right, that wouldn't make
it still needs to be a shorter period, yeah.
I have zero problem with the time frame, if we're gonna go that way, because my courtesy notices go out 3 days before. As long as they can renew it when the courtesy notice goes out, I'm good.
What was that last one?
Oh, I posted that they were discussing whether extending
Oh, okay.
2 days.
Okay, well, I guess maybe the next step is to go ahead and see if the way we've got it proposed, how many people are okay with it, and this really should be like, kind of like when we're doing users group, it should be one per library, not one, not everybody. So I don't know how many of you, I'm not sure there's that many here that's got more than one person, but it should be one per library. So I guess you're the chair, you want to go ahead and ask for the vote?
All right, and we get a vote.
What are you voting on?
For it.
For it. Okay.
For
it.
Or about 50-50.
Okay.
Well, that depends on how many people are here from other libraries.
Yeah.
I think we have a majority.
Huh?
I think we have a majority.
How about online?
I just typed it and tell them we're voting.
That's right, I need to get feedback from staff.
So,
Well,
Yeah.
only if it passes here, it goes to users group.
Did you have your hand up, Elizabeth?
I am going to.
They're together.
So if you get to that one, that's what I'm going to do.
I think Washington.
Online?
I'm getting there.
She's still getting there.
So, how many would say no and or give me more time?
I prefer
I usually give it
2.5.
2.5. Then she's half 4 and half again.
Yeah, I know.
I kind of like it.
Okay, so the ones I got 4 no and 3 yes.
Okay. So, the majority is yes. Okay.
Pretty close. What do we have? 5 no's, 5.5 no's, 6 no's.
Okay.
I would like a stronger.
Would you?
That's not a very strong, hey, let's do this kind of
No.
thing.
But if this is a send it to users group, and we go back and talk with people in our libraries and come to users group, you may get a strong mandated users group.
True. And this will be one of the things, assuming it comes out of here, that goes out prior to the next users group meeting to say, hey, this is a discussion point, here's the policy as proposed. We will be talking about this at users group. It could potentially affect you, so please.
And I guess, I mean, we've kind of jumped around on the agenda quite a bit, but one of the things that I was going to discuss is, it was decided after last users group that, we will be trying to get things out, like maybe a week before the meeting, we will be sending out, information so that you have an idea what's going on. We will no longer be doing, oral reports. We used to have committees, you know, Cassandra would do a report, the database would do a report, and that type of stuff. We're going to have written, and the reports will go out in a document before we actually have the meeting. So this most definitely will be included in there. So are you okay with it going on Kindle, or, I mean, you're not?
Well, so I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't think anybody would have any issue with this just based on how much I got beat up about this a number of years ago. As time has passed and I have mellowed on the idea a bit, this is something that if we're going to turn it on, it needs to be on for everybody, which means we want to have a lot of support for it. I don't want to turn something on that's not an enforced thing, i.e. something is broken and we have to fix it, or, you know, this is just a system change and there's nothing we can do kind of thing. This is a voluntary thing that we would be turning on, and I would like there to be a large amount of support for it. And if that means that we discuss it at users groups and say, here was a proposal, let's discuss it, let's take a temperature and see how people feel, and there's not a lot of support for it, or it's, you know, just kind of like, then maybe this is not the time to do it. Maybe we just need to continue to think about it for a while and let people kind of canvass their users and see. And maybe I don't know. It could be one of these things that sounds like a great idea, but it's just maybe not in practice. I don't know.
So I guess we say maybe we will take the proposed revision to users group for discussion.
Yeah, I think that's the best. I mean, if everybody's like, woo-hoo, this is great, but everybody was not, woo-hoo, this is great, so.
Okay.
And I think maybe we propose it to users group with the vote down.
Yeah.
To say, you know, it got, what, 66% approval.
What did you say there was? And you said you had 5 yes over there?
I had 3 yes and 4 no.
And at least
10 and...
At least 2 big libraries said no. So I saw Quincy pop up and
So
said
10 and
no.
6, huh?
Alpha Park was on the no side of that, so.
Okay.
But statistically, that's a lot of patrons being affected, that
Mhm.
maybe they wouldn't, so.
Okay. Alrighty. Yes.
What problem is that?
What? Oh, was that Wendy putting something up?
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, we'll go on then. Thank you, Kendall.
Am I needed for the next?
I don't think you're needed anymore. Well, just really quick before you do leave. The text to me not working in RSA CAT.
Yes,
We took the button out.
yes.
You said probably in the next upgrade that it should
I
be.
think they said it was fixed in the next upgrade. We'll see.
We
when
do know when we're doing the next upgrade.
No, when it's released. We're on the most current release.
Oh, okay,
So
so we don't know yet when.
I saw some preliminary release notes. That was not mentioned in there. That doesn't mean it's not fixed, it just wasn't mentioned in the preliminary release notes.
Okay, all right. Okay. So, you know, if you had patrons that like that text to me button in RSA CAT, it's broke.
I'm gonna say not too many people use it because it was broken for about a month and a half before anybody.
Before a patron said, hey, we had a call from a library where a patron said, hey, I can't use it, so. Okay. Okay, just kind of a reminder, everybody should know that we did have a workflows upgrade the weekend of August the 20th. If you don't, hopefully you know whether or not you've upgraded. I have had calls from some libraries, one of them that is still on a 3.4 and had upgraded this time. So there are several upgrades behind, so, you know, just if for some reason you're not sure whether you've upgraded or not, you come over here and go to the help button and go to the about, and it shows you the version number right here, and you should be on 3.5.2.1.1079. We also have a document out on the RSA website, and I just listed here in the document down here on how to check your workflows version number. So it does, Wendy did this for us, so it's all updated with the most recent information. So if for some reason you're not upgraded, let somebody here know, and James or somebody, and they can help you get to the most recent version. RSA membership update. We now have Knoxville Public Library fully online, which makes the people in that area very, very happy. They are circulating, they are placing holds, so some of you have probably seen holds coming through for Knoxville. And I do know that Michelle at Knoxville is very happy about the way the holds are working for them. So they're Sarah's sitting there shaking her head. So, is it working out okay for you guys? I mean, I knew she was going.
Working on deleting duplicate patrons too.
Right.
They're not required to go for work on them.
I know she said a lot of her patrons went to Galesburg, so
Yeah, probably about 3/4.
Yeah, so working on deleting those. Valley District Library, they are circulating. They still haven't had hold training yet. We do have Neponset and Bushnell, Williamsfield, Prairie Creek, and Ransom Memorial that are either moving up in membership or new libraries that are have joined RSA that they're not ready yet for the circulation training. They're all still working on the cataloging parts of it. I also wanted to mention Mailchimp. This is a new way that we have of sending emails here at RSA, and because we are using Mailchimp, when you get anything from us anymore, such as when Amanda sends out like her missing in transits, or we send out something about the upgrade or the meetings or that type of stuff, you should actually be getting 2 emails. You'll get one from Mailchimp and you'll get one from the old listserv. What is kind of nice, well, I don't know if it's nice because when you see the the actual figures, it's not too nice. But one of the things that we can do with Mailchimp is that after we've sent out an email, we can see how many people have actually opened the email and read it. So, you know, we have on the list serve that goes out, if we send it to everybody on the Mailchimp listserv, like 512 people that it goes to, and the majority of the time, probably 30% is what it is that has opened it. But it's kind of interesting for us to see how people are really reading our emails or not. It doesn't look like there's some people that are.
Going out as a duplicate and they're picking up.
Well, that could be too.
Instead of the Mailchimp one, your numbers are going to be kind of skewed.
And that could be true. Eventually, we had originally talked about when, you know, get the Mailchimp really going well to drop the one. I don't know if Kindle's still doing it. Eric, are you back there? Is he still talking about dropping the first one, or you don't really know?
There's no trouble with.
He says yes in the chat.
He says yes?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess he is. The plan is eventually just to be using Mailchimp. Amanda, now it's your turn. It is out on the.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to be talking to you about this document that Martha's handing out about the RSA Gmail fact sheet. This is also tied into what we were talking about with Mailchimp. So before we get to that part of this document, I'll just give you a little bit of an overview, and I'll go ahead and pull it up on here. But I had originally created this document for our back-to-school workshop in August, just as a refresher for the school librarians. But this information applies to also all types of libraries, because you guys all have a Gmail account that RSA is set for you. So
Oh, is it the same thing?
on this document, at the top, there's just some general information about why we set up the Gmail account. So this is a place for libraries to receive RSA listservs and reports and types of updates. Back when these were originally set up in like 2007, you know, even though email's been around for a long time, there were still people who didn't have email addresses, so this was a place for them to get those electronic communications. And so now it's our way of being able to send you stuff, because, you know, people leave libraries, email changes. It's just a kind of a consistent thing. These Gmail accounts can be forwarded to just one other email. So live libraries will have their Gmail forwarded to like their director or to like their circ supervisor, somebody who then can maybe pass on the information to the rest of the staff. Me or Wendy can set up forwarding for you if you don't have yours currently forwarded or not. So all libraries have a Gmail account, and if you have branches, the branches also each have their own individual Gmail account, so that's kind of important to remember. And then RSA likes to maintain access to all these Gmail accounts for libraries, so just keep that in mind. We set up the recovery information with these accounts because sometimes there's a high rate of turnover. Somebody will change the password, and then we don't know what it is. So if we keep the recovery information for our email and our phone number, we can go in and reset that for the next person. You're still able to go in and change the password, but we would prefer if you let us know when you do that. And if you do change the password, don't let us know. You'll be hearing from me, reaching out to you. It's probably the only time I'll ever ask you for a password. Promise I am legitimate. Also, just some other important stuff about these Gmail accounts. So as time's gone on, Google and Gmail have added a lot of different security measures. And so if you find yourself unable to log into your account even though you have the correct username and password, let us know, because sometimes it will have you do a confirmation code to get that device set up. It's just part of their security stuff. So if you have any issues with that, please let us know, and I can walk you through that and get that set up and working for you. Okay, and now to do with sort of the Mailchimp piece of this. So since we've transitioned to Mailchimp, often these emails will go into like a promotions tab or a spam folder. And so what I'm going to do is log into one of the library's Gmails and show you what you can do to make sure you're seeing our emails still. So I am going to sign into the Rushville Public Library's Gmail that has not gotten this set up. Kendall had sent this out in a listserv post like back in June. So, you know, sometimes that may not have been seen. So it's just important to know that, no, it's not going to let me log in. See if that would do. Okay. So you'll log in to your email, and because I checked this earlier, it doesn't show that there's any new emails and promotions tabs. If you don't have the tabs set up on your RSA Gmail, it would be in a spam folder instead. So I'm just going to go through the instructions on what you're supposed to do. So in this case, we'll go to the promotions tab, and you'll see that all these emails have not even been read. There's a couple, so you can see that this library has gone in there and seen a couple of these, but most of these are unread because they're not making it to the main inbox. So what you are going to do, we're going to go ahead and open this message. Let's see. And then we're going to go to this down arrow, and we're going to click on filter messages like this. Okay. And then, like I said, it'll have all this information, and this is sort of the identifier down here for that it's coming from Mailchimp. So what we're going to do is we're going to create filter with this search, and then you're going to check several boxes. So we're going to star it. We're going to have you say never send it to spam. We're going to categorize it as personal. That'll make sure it makes it to your main inbox. And also apply this filter to the other 41 emails that are still in this promotions tab. So we'll create filter. So now it's creating that. So now all of that's been moved from the promotions tab to the primary tab. So now when you log in, you will see that. And so basically that's what you need to do if you haven't done that yet. It's the same steps as the emails are going to the spam folder, because eventually we're going to stop using that old listserv, and if it's going to spam or promotions, you might never see our emails. And we send out a lot of important information, and like I said, it takes like, you know, less than a minute to do this. So, but are there any questions on that? No? Okay. Like I said, we can walk you through this over the phone. You know, it's pretty easy to do. This document, obviously, you know, you can take this back to your library, and it's also available. I guess I can show you where it is on the RSA website. It's under where Martha put the documents for today's meeting, but it's under system info and support.
No, it's under membership.
Oh, that's right. I know it's been moved, so.
No, but see at the top there's a section that says,
oh, there we go, listserv and Gmail, excuse me. So this is where you can find that Gmail fact sheet. Like I said, it's also under the documents for today's meeting. And this will also work if your library uses Gmail as your own provider for your library's email. The emails may still go to spam, so this is an important step to take if you get our listserv stuff directly. So just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Okay, I have been, I just wanted to let everybody know that I have been, in the last couple of months, working on revising some of the documents that's out in the RSA workflows and documentation section of our support site. We have, some of these documents have been out there for a long time, so some of them even have like wrong contact information and that type of thing on it. And then, of course, workflows changes sometimes in little ways, but it does change when we do different upgrades. So I've started working on these. You can tell anything that has been, I've started in the hold section. So that's where a lot of them are done. So anything that's been revised, it does say right here it's revised, and it gives you the date that it has been revised. You'll also be able to tell when you open them up if they've been revised, because we have a new form that we're starting to use now that has our name across the top. So just to let you know, I think last month in the last couple of months I've done 14 of these documents so far. So we put more of a, I hope this one's done that way now. I'm saying that more of kind of a generic contact information down here on the bottom of who to contact. So just to let you know, if you use some of these documents frequently, or you don't even, maybe don't look at them, but there may be something updated that you use all the time. So I'm going to keep working on them until I get everything in the circulation section updated, but it's going to take a long time. So just wanted to let you know. I also wanted to discuss a little bit, or tell you a little bit about the RSA, the barcodes you use on your items and you use for your patrons. We just want to make sure that you are, when you're ordering barcodes, if you're not ordering them from ID label, that you make sure that you are getting the correct types of barcodes. If your barcodes for your items or your barcodes for your patrons are in like numerical order, then you know they're wrong. Because our barcodes all have a check digit on the end. So you have to make sure that there is, that your barcodes have that check digit on there. So we do have, I got here again. I put one of the documents here, RSA member library responsibilities, and one of them, well, it does say that you need to, right here, utilize standardized RSA barcodes for patron cards. At this point right now, it's not, it wouldn't really cause a problem if you were using the incorrect types of barcodes, but previous to going onto Cersei Dynex, we used barcode verification, and if it didn't, if the barcodes actually have a calculation in them, and if they did not calculate correctly in the other software, then it would just say the barcode wasn't valid. So we want to make sure if something happened sometime in the future where we turn back on the barcode validation, if you have incorrect barcodes, they're not going to work when you're trying to check out to your patrons. So just make sure you are getting the correct types of barcodes. Like I say, if you're not getting them from ID label, I know lots of libraries are getting, like they have the cards with the barcodes printed on them, and lots of libraries over the years have got them from other vendors, and then they just check with us to make sure that they work. We have a little program where we put in the barcode and it tells us where it's calculated correctly or not. So if you haven't ever done that, I mean, if you've done that in the past, you don't need to worry about if you're using the same vendor. But if you're getting a different vendor, just make sure that you're checking with us to make sure your barcodes are correct. We did have one vendor for many years that libraries tried to use that he just absolutely could not get the barcode calculation correct, and he finally figured it out. But just make sure that the barcodes are the correct barcodes that you're supposed to be using. So RSA cap, I think we've talked about every one of those that I had on my agenda. I did talk about the state of the RSA reports. That's what will be going out prior to like user groups meetings. They will have the written reports from the different committees, and things that will be discussed at the meeting. In that, they'll go out at least a week, should be at least a week before the meeting, so that everybody will be aware about what will be discussed. So, upcoming events, we do have, I've scheduled a basic circulation workshop for Friday, September the 22nd. I've scheduled an RSA holds workshop for September the 26th. So if you have any new staff or any staff that would like a review of holds in circulation, they can sign up for that. There is a Blue Clouds Analytic Workshop at the end of October at Prairie Skies, Pleasant Plains branch. So you can sign up for that on the L2. And we also have an RSA users group meeting on the 2nd of November. I did also want to, I don't know how many of you actually, do interlibrary loan and do OCLC WorldShare, but they now have a new, what they call a system status dashboard. And up till now, anytime that, if you signed up for their alerts, anytime they were having trouble with the system and it went down and you couldn't actually access it, they would send an email to whatever email address that you gave them. But now they actually have what they call a dashboard there now. So if for some reason you are doing OCLC WorldShare or OCLC Connection and you want to be up to date on, you know, if it for some reason you try to get into WorldShare and it doesn't work, then you can go out to this dashboard and actually check to see if things are up or not, because it will tell you here whether they are not. So looks like HostWise, which I'm not sure what that is having problems right now. But you have an option over here to subscribe to updates. So if you are currently getting any kind of alerts, they're going to stop sending those out to your email address at the end of September. And this gives you an opportunity to subscribe to get the alerts from after the end of September. And, you know, when I looked at it, I think yesterday, there were some of these that had planned maintenance on it. These were the blue kind of a target-looking thing here on some of these, and then you could click on them, and they would give you a little more information. I don't think everything's okay. It's not gonna. Let's see what this one says. That didn't tell me much. But it'll tell you, that they are aware that there's a problem going on, and they're working on it type thing. So, and the link for that is on the end of the document. For the meeting for today. So, and also just to remind everybody that Talking Book, there are no longer any Talking Book staff members here in the building, and Talking Book is now being done out of the State Library in Springfield. So there is contact information on here in case anybody needs to contact the Talking Book service for anything. Time for other business.
Okay. Do we have any other business? Well, if not, the next meeting will be on January 11th, 2018.
It's serious.
All right, we'll adjourn. Next year. Did you have
Where are the links for the meetings?
Yeah, right.
The links for the